Oh, it's great to be back at E3. Thank you so much. I could not
Hey
be more
gang,
excited
what's
to
good?
be here.
Welcome to another E3 2018 video. This time we'll be talking about Bethesda's conference, specifically the section at the end that pertained to everything that Bethesda Game Studios was cooking up. This is more my own opinions and less an overview, so I'll have a timestamped link in the description in case you missed it. Anyway, let's talk about the big one, Fallout 76. My opinion on it hasn't changed all that much because, well, pretty much everything that we heard about the game turned out to be true. Jason Schreier is still a pretty reliable source when it comes to leaks. I think most people probably feel the same way. If you thought it sounded like a cool idea, you probably still do think that. And if multiplayer Fallout didn't sound like your jam, you probably still aren't gonna buy it. Although they've said it has one, story just doesn't seem to be the focus here. Among the best fan theories I've seen so far is that there's a twist and you're actually playing as what eventually becomes a part of the East Coast Enclave. It's a neat idea that has some potential. It could be a great way to frame the flippant nature of most players in the multiplayer world, especially with how they're sort of trivializing the use of nuclear missiles. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. What I will say is that until we see evidence of something like this, I'm just gonna keep calling a spade a spade. Story's gonna be taking kind of a back seat for this one. I do feel like this would have been a way easier pill to swallow if the last core game was a bit better in that department, but what are you gonna do? I wonder to myself, would I rather they attempt at a good story and fumble it, or just not make the attempt at all? I'm really not sure yet. Either way, I do hope that this one succeeds at what it's aiming for. And of course, at the very least, I do think it's a step further in the direction of Bethesda outsourcing another Fallout game. The less sacred they treat the IP, the more open they'll be to sharing it again. It hurts now, but it may pay off later. Fingers crossed. Well, beyond story, there were a few new things we did learn. The map is about 4 times the size of Fallout 4's. I gotta wonder just how packed it is with interior locations. Explorable homes, factories, caves, and so on were all over the place in Fallout 4. It'd be incredible if they were somehow able to pack this map just as densely, but I have my doubts. I'd almost suspect that the added map size is meant to compensate for that. I don't remember seeing any proper interiors during the showcase, aside from the starting vault. Anyway, perhaps the feature I'm still most curious about is precisely how the multiplayer works. We know that you can opt to play the game solo, but if you open yourself up to multiplayer, can you choose to play with only your friends? Or when you do you always open yourself up to the entire world? These are important tidbits for folks who either want to take a break from the harshness of PvP or just avoid it entirely. Now, we do know that character progression in terms of levels and perks definitely do stay with you through death. But what about items and resources you found? You definitely get caps from killing players who have a bounty, but I don't think you'll be able to actually loot other players. Then going further, how about structures you've built? We know you can easily build almost anywhere and move your building sites with the new camp item. But what happens when it gets destroyed or even nuked? My best guess is you pay in caps or raw resources at your deployable campsite to replace your destroyed stuff. Speaking of which, that nuclear missile system sounds absolutely wild. The idea that I could spend hours building up a small base and have someone just nuke it is pretty terrifying. That said, it seems pretty important too. It looks like it's a great way, or maybe the only way, to get the rare nuclear material used for crafting. Well, at the end of the day, it still very much seems like the experimental multiplayer game from Bethesda that we all thought it was going to be. They even announced there was going to be a beta test to work out multiplayer functionality. They also said that they'd keep on supporting the game for years and years. Makes sense. I doubt we'll see another Bethesda-developed core Fallout game within the next 10 years. If all goes well, this'll be a good way to generate revenue off the Fallout IP. Also, like I said, gives me a little hope that they'll outsource another, more traditional Fallout game during that period. It's a possibility. So, the next big thing on the docket was a new mobile game. Apparently, Fallout Shelter brought in a whopping 120 million players, more than all of their past games combined. Makes you wonder if it grossed them more money than Fallout 4 itself. Maybe. Either way, there is a new mobile game. This time it's an Elder Scrolls one, The Elder Scrolls Blades. It plays similar to the core games, but not quite the same. Graphically speaking, it's surprisingly gorgeous. I imagine it'll tear right through phone batteries like nobody's business. Fortunately, it's coming to more than mobile devices. But like I said, I'm just not sure if I'm sold on the combat and exploration. It's going to be free to play, so there's really no harm in trying it out. Though I feel like, at best, it'll be a fun platform to deliver more side stories. Could make for a good enough toilet game. Then, finally, came the damage control, so to speak. These were probably included to ease the pains of their experimentation with Fallout 76 and mobile games. I think they were a little self-aware here. It was the announcements of Starfield and The Elder Scrolls 6. I didn't expect these at all! Holy crap! But when you do consider just how little they did announce about these games, it definitely makes sense as a sort of damage control announcement. Pretty much all they said is that these games exist and that they're working on them. But it was apparently enough to get a lot of people really excited, even though we already knew that they were working on these games. I guess it was a smart move? So really, the only important takeaways here is that Starfield is their next core game. It adheres to the usual Bethesda experience. Starfield is apparently a next-gen game. Quotes from Todd himself. I'm guessing it'll be out late next year or in 2020, if their usual timelines for these games are to be trusted. For folks playing on consoles, I think the next-gen phrasing ought to be something worth taking note of. Sounds like you may need to pony up for the next-gen hardware before playing. Perhaps another possibility is that it's a game that bridges between both hardware generations, with a higher fidelity and higher performance version appearing on newer hardware. Just a guess, though. Anyway, going further from Starfield, I'd roughly say to expect Elder Scrolls 6 to be 4 or maybe even 5 years after Starfield, meaning in 2024 or 2025. Hey, I'm open to surprises, but that could be at least halfway through the lifespan of the next console generation, if not towards the beginning of the end of their lifespan. That's a long wait. Maybe their newly acquired development offices will speed up that process, but I'm hesitant to get hopeful, especially with them releasing these new games that they have promised will get continued upkeep and support over years. Not to mention, I'd wager that Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6 will be even larger in scope and undertaking. Well, the very final takeaway was a brief flyby of a portion of the region we'll be playing in The Elder Scrolls 6. There's certainly room left for some interpretation. My personal take is that it looks like how I'd imagine High Rock. I'm curious what everybody else thinks. Please do let me know. Read the comments. Anyway, that rounds up Bethesda Game Studios' showing for E3 2018. The rest of the conference from Bethesda Softworks was pretty cool too. Rage 2 still looks promising, and Doom Eternal was a real pleasant surprise. We may still see a little tidbit more of Fallout 76 at the Sony conference. If we do, I don't imagine it'll be very much. Anyway, till next time, peace.